Hello, everybody. One of the questions I'm often asked is how much money do real estate agents actually make out there? Given the Canadian real estate economy and the market over the last several years, one might think that along with prices increasing, so too have agent income. So we'll talk a little bit about that here today, but we'll also explain just exactly how real estate agents get paid whenever a sale occurs in Canada, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the expenses that realtors have to deal with, going about their business, and then I'll share a little bit of my insight as to what I think agents are actually achieving out in the marketplace today. So first up, let's look at a graph that we have here from NAR. So this is the National Association of Realtors, or the U.S. equivalent of the Canadian Real Estate Association. So they did a survey in 2022, and according to them, the average or typical realtor is 56 years old. Two-thirds of agents are female. The typical realtor has 8 years worth of experience, which seems like a lot to me. And in 2021, it says the typical agent did 12 transactions or one deal a month, which I don't believe that last one. I think perhaps when agents are filling out the survey, they may be pumping up their tires a little bit, because it certainly isn't that same level here in Canada. And so to back that up, we've got some stats here out of the Toronto Real Estate Board. So, a real estate sale contains piles and piles of data points. Every time there's a transaction, a whole bunch of things are tracked. So in addition to, market area and sale price and time on market and all of that stuff, every real estate board that's tracking statistics will also maintain data points for who the listing realtor was on the sale and who the buyer agent was on the sale. Now, each of those two are considered a transaction for the real estate agent community. And so what we're looking at here is a compilation of data from the Toronto Real Estate Board for 2022 that indicated that of the 70,000 agents that are licensed within the board, 30,000 of them, almost half, didn't even do a deal. And then 25,000 or 29,000 agents wrote between 1 and 5 transactions, and 85% agents wrote 0 to 5 transactions in the business. So much different in Canada, or at least in the Toronto Real Estate Board, than you're seeing out of the States here. And so I'll come back to this graphic here in a minute, but let's look at some of the other resources that are available if you were looking this up, contemplating perhaps an entry into the industry. So this is from Alberta, where it says the average salary for agents is $86,000 a year. I also don't believe that. I think that's too high. And that their average work week is 42 and a half hours per week. Well, that's really hard to really be able to tell. I guarantee you that the agents that are really going for it are working considerably more hours than that. And the agents that aren't doing transactions wouldn't be anywhere near that amount either. It also says here the average wage per hour. That doesn't exist in real estate sales, okay? Nobody is paid per hour here. We'll talk about what you can make per hour near the end of this video, but if you're used to making an hourly income and you're coming over to the world of real estate sales, you need to understand that it's feast or famine. You're only paid when a transaction is successfully completed, and you get zero for any of the work done up to that if a deal doesn't come together. So there's no hourly wages inside this business. Here's some data from British Columbia, which I actually think is amongst the most accurate of what I've been able to see, where it shows the low, medium, and high end of real estate agent incomes, and says the low end is about $30,000 per year. The median or average is about $55,000 per year, and the high end of it is about $140 or so. And so I actually think this is much closer to the truth for what you could expect real estate agents to be making, based on my ownership experience of a couple brokerages here in Western Canada, and seeing how agents are actually doing out there. I think this is probably pretty close to the right numbers for this. Now, with respect to how much agents make per deal, which when you know that and multiply it by the expected transactions per year, you can get a sense of the annual income that agents would be making. I want to talk a little bit about how agents are paid per transaction. So First up, you need to know that there are no rules with respect to commissions when it comes to real estate sales. If you're a consumer and you're hiring an agent, or perhaps considering hiring an agent, and they tell you this is the industry standard of a commission amount, or this is what all agents make on every deal, you don't have to take their word for that. Because every association across the country goes out of their way to say that there is no set standard for commissions, and that consumers are free to negotiate this with their agents if they want to. There's also tons of models out there. Today we're going to talk about the conventional model, which is based off of a percentage of the sales price. But there's other models out there that are flat rate. You can pay brokerages a few $100s to just get your listing up on realtor.ca. That's called a mere posting, but then you're doing all of the work and negotiations yourself. So there's more than one way to skin a cat when it comes to selling your house in Canada. But what we're looking at today is going to be the conventional model, okay? And remember, I put this in here, is that, if you're trying to save some money, be careful, because if you save money on commissions, you might actually get a much lower price than you could get for your property if it was marketed and sold properly, the right way, with the best exposure and the highest levels of professionalism that Canadians should expect from their real estate agents. So to understand commissions, most commissions use a percentage of the sales price. So here's give you a bit of an idea. In Ontario, the common rate is around 5%, but I think this has been trending down closer to 4.5 maybe over the last few years. Alberta and BC are on a graduated commission structure, which means they charge $7,000 or so for the first $100,000, and then on the balance of sales price, they charge a lower rate than that. So it averages out to around 4% or so, but they use a graduated system in Alberta. And this is usually for both Ontario and for Alberta and BC, and really anywhere you're going, is that the gross commission amount that the seller is paying is usually carved into two pieces, one for the agent representing the seller and another for the agent representing the buyer. Okay, so remember, when we were talking about numbers of transactions, every sale of a property will have two transactions there for the real estate agent community, because there's two agents that are typically working that deal. Okay, so if we were looking at a $500,000 property in a sale price, in Ontario, your commission, let's say it's the 5% amount, that would be $25,000 as a GCI, or gross commission income. Half of that goes to the buyer agent, and half of that goes to the listing agent. If that same $500,000 house were to sell in Alberta with the prevailing rate of commissions, it would be 7% of the first $100,000 and 3% on the balance of sales price. So $7,000 plus $12,000 being $19,000. So Alberta agents aren't doing quite as well as Ontario agents are on a per deal basis, but that same 50-50 split to buyer agent and seller agent is usually also at play here. So $9,500 to a buyer agent and $9,500 to a selling agent. So these can seem like really big numbers on a per transaction basis, and sellers certainly do feel this, but the real estate brokerage industry is extremely competitive with lots and lots of realtors out there. So if you come down to this, 29,000 out of 70,000 agents on the Toronto board is doing between 1 and 5 transactions, and 6,000 agents are doing between 6 and 10. So if you add the two of these together, it's almost 35,000 agents, or half of the total agent body out of the Toronto board are doing 10 or less per year, okay? Which, when you come back to this stat that we were talking about before, where the average agent in the state is doing 12, that's why I find it to just be a little bit hard to believe. But anyway, not a lot of agents are doing a ton of volume within the real estate industry. And that's before you even factor in all of the expenses that agents are going to have to deal with. So this is a really broad list here, and I'm not going to get into how to be the most profitable agent and what expenses you should have and whatnot. But there's a lot of them out there for agents to do. And remember, many of these expenses exist for realtors, whether or not they're even producing. Okay, agents can spend thousands of dollars on marketing for a property that doesn't even sell. They can spend thousands of dollars promoting themselves and have no idea how many clients that they can expect to pick up off a certain marketing campaign. So there's a risk factor towards this industry that you really need to be comfortable with if you want to get out there and start chasing these big commission checks for selling property here. in Canada. So $5,000 an hour as a real estate agent. Is that legit? And how do you do that? Well, yeah, it's absolutely legit and quite easy to achieve, in fact, if you're a veteran expert real estate agent. So if you're like in the zone in your market area, you're dialed right in, you're spending, your entire working day working deals, talking to buyers, talking to sellers, talking to other agents, and in the zone. This is not all that hard to believe for me at all, actually. And probably there would be many agents that would be doing significantly more than this on an hourly basis. But just think about an agent that maybe gets referred to a listing. So they sell one house, and maybe that owner's neighbor sees the property sell really quickly, walks across the street, asks that seller, hey, who is your realtor and how are they to work with? Sets up a referral for that particular realtor to go meet this new seller. The pro agent goes in there, totally kills the listing presentation. As soon as they get a signed contract from the seller, they've got their systems already set up to go and market this property and get the word out of this available, of this property is going to be available. Because they're a pro, they price it perfectly, and they get lots of buyer interest right now because we're in a low inventory environment. And if they had an agent or a buyer come to them directly that's not represented from another agent, they could make both sides of that commission rather than just one side of it. So in BC, you're not allowed to do that. In Alberta and Ontario, you can. But if you're double ending it, obviously, you're making twice the amount of money for almost the same amount of hours into a deal. And so I can easily see how it would maybe be 3-4 hours or so tops of overall total work for a real established veteran experienced pro agent in the right market condition. And so $5,000 an hour is entirely reasonable to me, or very easy to see that this would be made by agents out there that know what they're doing. But take into account too that not all deals are like that, obviously, and that we could spend just as much time, if not more, talking about the thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars that are wasted by realtors for no money at all. I'm sure if you talk with anybody that's been in the business, they'll tell you about the clients that they drove around over a month worth of weekends, showed them 30 different properties, and then that buyer decided, you know what, I'm not going to buy anything. And so that happens all the time too, where they would have several transactions that don't even happen, that they've sunk hours and hours and lots of expenses and time putting into that. So $5,000 an hour will happen for pros, but it's not going to happen for you if you're a rookie. And in my experience, it takes about 12 months of consistent work to achieve consistent results out of this industry. So you need to be doing the right things on a consistent basis if you want to have the leads coming in your way, if you want your conversations to be efficient, and if you want to be able to count on a certain amount of business for a modest spend on marketing and business development. It takes about a year to get that. So it's going to be very lean to start, and many ways that this can go wrong. So if you're interested in that, please follow my channel. We're going to be talking a lot about the real estate industry here in all forms. I have a huge passion for real estate entrepreneurs. So if you are a real estate agent out there and you're wondering how can I get ahead or what can I do more, feel free to reach out to me. I can tell you a little bit more about it. And subscribe to the channel here if you'd like a little bit more information on the real estate industry. You'll be sure to find that here. Thanks very much for watching, guys. We'll see you next video.